Hello. So you've got an assignment coming up in your class that's a summary. And the main point of it is to help you learn how to use the databases. But I want to demystify what a summary is because I think it'll be helpful for you later when you're working on your research project. So here we go. So the assignment says that you're providing an article citation in MLA format. That means you're putting a works cited page on the end of it, and you're typing a paragraph, at least a full paragraph, not just a few sentences, that is a summary of the article. And it needs to be in your own words, not copied and pasted from the abstract, or preferably not chat GPT either. And I guess while I'm here, I'll just say, if you have ChatGPT do this, you won't learn how to do it yourself. And someday that's going to matter. So you decide, but I don't think a paragraph is going to kill you. So now let's go on. So what is a summary not? You've probably been asked to, summarize a book or a movie or something in your classes before, like Huckleberry Finn. And so you just kind of tell the main events. There's these characters and they have these adventures and you list them out and then the story ends however it ends. Or you just say kind of this story is about friendship or race relations or whatever it happens to be for Huckleberry Finn. So that's not what an academic summary is. It's also, though, not an essay on the same topic as the article you're supposed to be summarizing. So you're not bringing in outside sources to confirm or refute the writer's arguments. You are just summarizing their arguments. So basically, an academic summary is a highly structured statement of a piece of writing's main argument and the evidence they use to support that argument. So and by highly structured, I mean that for the first line, you should say in whatever the title is, comma, author's name, argues, and then what's the main argument of the article, period. Avoid putting the title first because it just gets everything all gummed up with the extra pronoun. I give an example here. In title by author, he or she argues, blah, blah, blah. You can make author be this subject of argues if you do it as it looks in the top there. All right, so for the rest of the summary, you're just tracing the progression of the argument. So you might have, supporting points, first they argue this to support their main argument, and maybe an example or discussion of the type of support that's being used. Is it logic? Is it credibility? Is it some kind of an emotional appeal? Really depends on how long of a summary you need for what you're doing, but I'll say that outlines really help for you to decide what you're going to put into the summary and how you're going to structure it. What you want to do when you're doing this, though, is distinguish between things that are key supporting, ideas that trace directly back to the original thesis, relevant examples, like just choose one of, here's one way that they support this particular part of the summary, and distinguish between those two things and just details that are interesting, that jump out at you, but they're not really relevant to understanding the gist of the argument. This is one of the key mistakes that I see students make, is that they just kind of get off on a tangent because there's something in the article that really interests them, and so they're trying to tell that story instead of just stepping back and getting a broad view of the whole argument, and trying to say it in, not as few words as possible for the sort of scope of what you're doing. So in academic writing, we use these because frequently we're responding to or expanding on the ideas of others. So in order to do that, we have to summarize those ideas, because we can't assume that everyone has read the same, academic journals or, things like that we've read as writers. So they summarize the original ideas, they tell where they came from. In this case, it can be as short as a paragraph in a paper, or it can be long as a couple of pages. Again, it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here for my face-to-face students. For rhetorical analysis, it's the same thing as this. It starts like a summary, but then it adds things like the context, what's the situation or the exigence that caused this, writing to be created in the first place. Who's the audience, the purpose, what's the genre? And then it's just an evaluation of the choices that the writer has made with specific examples from the text. Generally, these choices involve, different aspects of rhetoric like tone, logos, ethos, pathos, other devices like rhythm, sounds, or figures of speech, all of those kinds of things. In this case, if there's something really specific and interesting that jumps out at you, they would be fair game for this kind of analysis, but they're not really in a summary per se. And then the works cited, yes, you do need one. Use work without the S if there's only one work, which probably there will be on summary or rhetorical analysis that you might do. Use works with an S for multiple sources used. And finally, tips for choosing a source. The source for most summaries and for most rhetorical analyses need to be longer than the scope of whatever you're trying to do. If you have a one-page summary assignment, you need enough outline and brief examples to meet that length. If it's a paragraph, then maybe it's a much shorter article, but it still needs some points for you to describe. It also needs to have some kind of coherent argument that has specific supporting points. It can't really be a rant, because that's really hard to trace a progression of an argument that is really just all over the place. And it also needs to be something that you go into knowing that you can discuss it in an unbiased way. So if you really, really have strong feelings about a thing that you're reading, then maybe that's not a great thing to use for a summary, especially for an exercise like this. If you are using it for, you're going to maybe refute it in some way in an argument that you're going to make, then maybe you just need to work a lot harder at stating it in a fair and unbiased way so that the person who holds that argument can see that you're being fair and that you understand them. You're not just sort of creating a straw man that's going to be really easy for you to knock down. You've really tried to understand their point of view. So finally, for resources, I have a section of a book that I use in my face-to-face class called Write What Matters. I will put that into your course in my kind of resources page that I've got in there for you. But I highly recommend it. It's a bit longer than what's actually in your online course right now, but I think it's a lot more helpful for understanding what summaries are. So I point you to that. I think it has an example summary in there that kind of shows you the formula. So I hope this has been helpful, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.